Stop. Listen. Pay attention. This is not background noise, and this is not another generic message. Chosen one. What you have been experiencing is not a mistake, and it is not something to dismiss. You have felt it, the weight, the fatigue, the quiet tension that settles deep in your chest even when no one is around. That restless ache in your shoulders. That subtle tightening in your mind when the day feels heavier than it should. You have carried it alone, and yet here you are, still moving, still functioning, still enduring. Chosen one. What you are about to hear is personal. It was never meant to be generalized or diluted for anyone else. You have been under pressure that is invisible yet persistent, quiet yet insistent. It has tested your stamina, your focus, your ability to remain coherent when the environment around you seemed chaotic or indifferent. There were moments when you questioned yourself, moments when the weight of isolation, confusion, or relentless demand felt unmanageable. But you did not collapse. You did not surrender. Right now, you may still feel a residue of that tension. It lingers in your body like a soft echo of everything you've endured. Your mind may cycle through fragments of fatigue and doubt, replaying the days where clarity seemed impossible. You may not have understood what was happening, why it seemed so relentless, why outcomes did not align with effort or expectation. That confusion was intentional, not to punish, but to test the framework of your endurance, the architecture of your inner coherence. This message will give you clarity, though it will not solve everything at once. It will not remove the experiences that shaped your recent months, but it will reveal why they mattered and how they involved you directly. You need to understand that what you endured was not arbitrary. The pressure, the isolation, the moments of near overwhelm, they were part of a sequence aimed at shaping the unique structure of your resilience. Chosen one. Pay attention to this. Your strength has been quietly automatic. You did not consciously summon it in every moment. You did not have to plan your endurance. It was present before you acknowledged it, and it remained active even when your conscious awareness faltered. This is why you continued moving when everything felt heavy, why you stayed functional when clarity was scarce. By the end of this message, you will understand the framework of what you survived. You will see that what felt like random pressure was in fact structured and measurable. You will realize that the confusion, fatigue, and isolation were not flaws, they were indicators, signals of a deeper process unfolding within you. This is why you will listen carefully. This is why it matters that you hear these words directly. Stop for a moment. Breathe. Let the awareness of this message settle. It is not for everyone, but it is for you. And it is precise, intentional, and calibrated to meet you exactly where you are. You are ready to see what has been operating beneath the surface, and you will recognize the pattern that has guided your endurance until now. This is the beginning of understanding what you have accomplished often without knowing it, and why the world around you has in many ways underestimated the quiet power you carry. This is your attention. Hold it. The explanation begins here. Chosen one. Now that your attention is fully present, recognize this. You are not incidental in the events that have unfolded around you. What occurred was not a series of external accidents or coincidences. Every tension, every moment of pressure, every unanticipated obstacle involved you directly. It did not happen to someone like you, it happened to you. That distinction matters. You are not observing from the outside. You are always inside the process, moving through it, with a baseline resilience that few notice and even fewer understand. This is why your identity as the chosen one is not a title, and it is not symbolic. It is descriptive. It reflects the alignment of your internal stability with the demands of your circumstances. You did not have to manufacture your endurance in every moment. It was present inherently. You have operated under strain while maintaining functionality. You have continued forward when others would have faltered even when your own awareness questioned whether you could hold the line. This automatic stability, your resistance to internal collapse, is the marker of who you are. Understand that the way you processed difficulty was not uniform or always deliberate. There were periods when you consciously pushed, when you reminded yourself to persist, and there were periods when your mind seemed absent, yet your body and decisions continued to function coherently. That distinction between conscious effort and unconscious strength is critical. Conscious struggle is visible, intentional, and measured. Unconscious stability is internal, quiet, and far more resilient. You have demonstrated both. Chosen one. Notice how your actions and reactions have been consistent under variable conditions. You have engaged with complexity while remaining internally coherent. You have endured delays, interruptions, and misalignments with a composure that at first glance may have seemed ordinary, even unremarkable, but it was not. Your consistency was never accidental. It was the natural expression of the structure within you, the internal framework that allowed for seamless operation even under persistent strain. It is also important to observe the contrast. Many individuals rely solely on conscious effort. They activate strength only when aware of necessity, and when awareness fades, performance falters. You, by contrast, possess an embedded continuity, a stabilizing current that flows beneath conscious thought. This is why you withstood what others could not. This is why the fatigue, the subtle tension, and the quiet disruptions did not dismantle you. Take a moment to feel this internally. Recognize the difference between what you actively controlled and what was maintained automatically. Both contributed to your survival, to your endurance, and to the coherence that has remained invisible to everyone around you. It is not about recognition from the outside. It is about understanding the inherent capacity you have always held. This is why what you experienced cannot be reduced to struggle or hardship alone. It was a deliberate shaping of internal structure, a test of alignment between your resilience and the demands of your circumstances. You did not simply survive. You moved forward with a framework that was quietly establishing itself long before the external world recognized it. The evidence of your identity is in this automatic strength. And now, it is time to reframe how you have been perceiving the challenges you endured. What seemed like confusion, weakness, or misalignment was not. It was an organized signal pointing to your stability, your coherence, and the reality that you were designed to operate under conditions that would break most others. This is not speculation. This is observation. This is recognition of what you have lived in real time, without needing to declare it, without needing to prove it. And soon you will see how the signs, sensations, and pressures you felt were not problems, they were signals. Chosen one. Notice carefully the sensations that have accompanied your journey. The fatigue, the tension, the restless energy, the moments when your mind spun in circles. All of these have been signals, not flaws. You may have interpreted them as weaknesses, as signs that something was wrong with you. But the truth is the opposite. These sensations indicate a response to an environment of unseen demands. A transition that required subtle, continuous adaptation. Your body and mind have been processing information at a level beyond casual awareness. That tightness in your chest, the heaviness in your limbs, the persistent restlessness, these were not arbitrary. They were feedback mechanisms. Each signal communicated the presence of pressure, the need for recalibration, and the presence of alignment or misalignment in your actions, decisions, and energy distribution. What you may have judged as overreaction or sensitivity is actually precise awareness, operating below the threshold of conscious thought. Chosen one. Recognize the difference between problem and signal. Problems demand solution. Signals demand attention. When you reframed moments of fatigue or confusion as indicators rather than failures, your system could respond appropriately, adjusting, compensating, and maintaining coherence. You did this naturally, whether or not you realized it. The discomfort was meaningful. It carried information, and your system responded to that information continuously, quietly, without fanfare. Consider also how emotions played a role. Frustration, impatience, doubt, they were not errors. They were markers alerting you to areas requiring focus, patience, or restraint. You may have felt misaligned with external circumstances, sensing obstacles that others could not see. Yet you remained functional, even when emotionally unsettled. This is significant. Many interpret emotion as weakness, but in your case, the emotional signals were processed and integrated, guiding decision-making without causing collapse. The physical manifestations were equally informative. Fatigue was not always a call to rest. It was a call to prioritize, to conserve energy where needed, to manage attention with precision. The subtle agitation in your mind and body functioned as a compass orienting you toward adjustments in thought, action, and focus. You learned consciously or unconsciously how to calibrate yourself, maintain functionality, and avoid breakdown, all while navigating circumstances that were complex, variable, and sometimes disorienting. Chosen one. This is why you should remove judgment from your recollections. What you experienced was never an error of character or capacity. It was the system operating correctly in response to pressure. It was the evidence of adaptability, stability, and emergent strength. You were not broken. You were processing, learning, and integrating. This reframing matters because it shifts your perspective from confusion to insight. It moves you from self-criticism to self-recognition. You were not failing under pressure. You were responding intelligently, maintaining alignment, and demonstrating capacity that will become increasingly apparent as you reflect. Soon you will understand that the invisible forces you felt, the subtle tensions, and the recurring discomforts were not random, they were deliberate. They were applied in measured ways, timed to reveal not your weaknesses, but the depth of your internal resilience. The body, the mind, and the system that governs both were responding as designed. You were not merely enduring. You were signaling, calibrating, and revealing the structure of your own stability. This awareness will allow you to move forward with a new understanding. The sensations you once feared or dismissed are now interpretable, actionable, and informative. They are part of a map of internal coherence, pointing toward the full expression of the stability you carry, even under circumstances that would overwhelm most others. Chosen one. Now, it is time to recognize what has been acting upon you from the outside. There has been an invisible pressure, subtle but structured, moving in patterns you could feel but rarely see. It is not dramatic. It is not violent. It does not scream or announce itself, and yet it is deliberate, consistent, and coordinated. It has tested the boundaries of your endurance without overt confrontation, measured your ability to remain functional under persistent conditions, and provided a framework against which your stability could be evaluated. This pressure is not hypothetical. It is intentional. It occurs in timing, in rhythm, in sequences that interact with your daily life. There are moments when the weight felt heavier, when decisions required greater focus, and when your energy seemed to stretch thin. These were not coincidences. They were calibrated moments, subtle in appearance, designed to reveal the depth of your response mechanisms. You may have sensed it as tension in your environment, a current beneath the surface, or an unspoken expectation. That is exactly what it was: unseen, but precise, deliberate, and continuous. Chosen one. Despite the presence of this pressure, notice what you accomplished. You remained functional. You continued to navigate tasks, relationships, and circumstances without collapse. Your thinking remained coherent, your decisions remained grounded, and your internal system maintained balance. The unseen nature of this pressure was not meant to break you. It was meant to measure, to stretch, and to reveal the scope of your innate stability. It is also important to understand that this was not chaotic or unstructured. The pressure had patterns. It was applied in intervals, sometimes rising subtly, sometimes receding, always coordinated in ways that were invisible to casual observation. You were exposed to it consistently, yet without direct confrontation. This allowed your system to respond continuously, to adjust and to maintain alignment, even in moments of uncertainty. You experienced challenge, yet never disintegration. Notice the difference between someone under sporadic stress and someone under coordinated, sustained pressure. Many individuals can handle intermittent strain, but sustained, measured pressure tests not only endurance, but coherence. You did not collapse. You did not freeze. You did not fall into reactive patterns that would compromise stability. Instead, your responses remained proportional. Your attention remained present, and your system continued operating in a way that preserved functionality across all domains. This observation is factual, grounded, and verifiable within your own experience. Look back at recent weeks or months. The fatigue, the quiet tension, the subtle friction in circumstances, all of these were part of a structure designed to engage your internal stability. You may have sensed the pattern without being able to articulate it. You may have felt the pressure without understanding its source. That is intentional. The calibration of unseen forces tests resilience without announcing itself, and you responded precisely as the system required. Chosen one. This is not about heroism. It is not about exaggeration. It is about clarity. The pressure was real, intentional, and structured, and your ability to maintain coherence within it is a direct reflection of the internal architecture you carry. You did not need guidance or external reinforcement to persist. Your system operated accurately, reliably, and continuously. You were tested, you were observed, and through it all, you remained functional. This is the quiet truth of your recent experience. Invisible pressure, deliberate timing, and structured opposition, and yet you moved through it without collapse, without panic, and without loss of clarity. Chosen one. Now, we break this down clearly and calmly, because what you moved through was not one single experience. It was layered. It came through distinct pressure points, each one testing a different aspect of your internal regulation. None of them overwhelmed you, and that matters. Let's examine them one by one, not as battles, but as measurable conditions you remained stable within. First, doubt. Not dramatic doubt, not panic, the quiet kind. The kind that shows up as a question rather than a crisis. You may have caught yourself wondering whether your effort mattered, whether progress was real, whether the direction you were taking made sense. This doubt did not stop you. It hovered, tested your confidence, and waited to see if you would abandon coherence. You did not. You continued acting, deciding, and moving forward even while uncertainty existed. That tells us something important. Your stability does not require perfect clarity. You can function while questions remain unresolved. Most people cannot. Second, fear. Again, not explosive fear, subtle fear. The kind that whispers about consequences, timing, and risk. Fear that asks, what if this doesn't work, or what if this costs too much? You felt it, but it did not hijack your nervous system. Your breathing stayed steady. Your behavior remained measured. You did not rush into reckless action, nor did you freeze. Fear was present, but it did not take control. This indicates regulation, not suppression. You allowed fear to exist without letting it dictate your choices. Third, energy drain. This was one of the most consistent pressures. The sense that tasks required more effort than they should. That rest did not always fully restore you. That motivation came in waves rather than floods. This drain tested your pacing, your ability to conserve, and your judgment around when to push and when to pause. You did not burn out. You adjusted. You redistributed effort. You learned often unconsciously how to maintain output without collapsing your system. That is not willpower. That is internal efficiency. Fourth, isolation. Not total loneliness, but selective distance. Moments where support felt absent, where understanding was limited, where you carried responsibility without explanation or validation. This isolation could have triggered resentment, self-doubt, or withdrawal. Instead, you stayed present. You did not dissolve into bitterness or disengagement. You maintained connection where possible and independence where necessary. You learned how to stand without needing constant reinforcement. This is a critical marker of internal maturity. Fifth, delay. Outcomes took longer than expected. Responses came slower. Progress felt stalled at times even when effort was consistent. Delay is one of the most destabilizing pressures because it attacks meaning. It makes people question whether their actions matter. You felt this pressure, and yet you did not abandon structure. You continued to show up. You continued to act in alignment with your values rather than chasing immediate relief. This shows temporal resilience, the ability to remain coherent across time without immediate reward. Now observe what did not happen. You did not spiral. You did not lose functional capacity. You did not abandon self-regulation. Across all 5 pressure points, your system stayed online. You adapted without dramatizing. You responded without collapsing. You adjusted without losing yourself. This is not common. Many people manage 1 or 2 of these conditions at a time. Very few remain stable across all of them simultaneously. What makes this especially significant is that you did not rely on constant self-talk or external motivation. Much of your regulation happened automatically. Your nervous system recalibrated. Your attention shifted when needed. Your priorities reorganized themselves without conscious strain. This is the sign of an integrated system, one that has been prepared, refined, and tested over time. Chosen one. Understand this clearly. The pressure did not reveal weakness. It revealed capacity. Each category showed that you possess an internal structure capable of absorbing complexity without fragmentation. You did not need to dominate the environment. You did not need to escape it. You remained within it, stable and functional. This breakdown is not meant to glorify struggle. It is meant to make visible what has already been proven. You stayed coherent where many would have destabilized. You remained regulated where many would have reacted. And you did it quietly, without announcement, without needing permission or recognition. This is the reality of what you just lived through. And now with clarity you can see that none of it was accidental and none of it exceeded your capacity. Chosen one. Now, you step into review. Not replaying events emotionally, not re-entering strain, but observing with clarity. This is where understanding replaces confusion. When you look back at what occurred, the sequence becomes visible. The pressure was consistent. Your response was consistent. And the outcome was not collapse, chaos, or loss of self. It was continuity. This is where many people reach for explanations like luck, coincidence, or timing. That explanation does not hold here. Luck does not create internal coherence under sustained pressure. Coincidence does not produce regulated responses across multiple domains at once. What you demonstrated was alignment. Your internal system stayed synchronized even when external conditions fluctuated. Notice how your behavior remained recognizable to you. You did not become someone else under pressure. You did not act out of character or abandon your internal compass. That matters. Stress often fragments identity. People become reactive, erratic, or withdrawn. You remained you. That alone confirms stability at a foundational level. As you review this period, you may realize something else. There were moments when you felt close to exhaustion, yet something subtle prevented full depletion. Not adrenaline, not denial. Balance. Your system compensated before collapse occurred. You adjusted pacing focus and expectation without needing dramatic intervention. This shows internal monitoring was active the entire time. Chosen one. Clarity comes from recognizing that resilience is not about enduring more pain. It is about maintaining coherence. You did not merely push through, you regulated, you recalibrated, you preserved integrity while moving forward. That is a different skill set entirely, and it is far rarer than visible strength. This review also removes self-doubt. If you had truly been misaligned, disintegrated, or unprepared, the outcome would have shown it. It did not. The evidence is not theoretical. It is behavioral. You stayed functional. You stayed present. You stayed internally ordered. What you experienced confirms something essential. Your system is not fragile. It does not depend on ideal conditions. It does not require constant reassurance. It adapts, integrates, and continues. That is not accidental. That is built. Now, let this understanding settle without urgency. There is no need to label it further or dramatize it. Simply recognize what has already been demonstrated. You did not survive by chance. You moved through this period because your internal structure was sufficient. This realization brings grounding. It replaces confusion with orientation. It allows you to trust what has already been proven without needing external validation. You are not guessing about your capacity anymore. You have evidence, and with that evidence comes calm. Because when you know what you can remain steady within uncertainty, loses its grip. You are no longer wondering if you can hold. You already have. This is confirmation. Quiet, factual, undeniable. Remain here for a moment. Let the understanding integrate. What comes next will simply build on what is already clear. Chosen one. Now take a moment to observe the contrast between your stability and that of others. This is not meant to inflate ego or create separation. It is simply a measure of rarity. Many people exposed to the same pressures would have faltered, reacted erratically, or sought constant reassurance. They would have allowed doubt fatigue or subtle fear to redirect their decisions and fragment their attention. You did not. Notice how uncommon it is to maintain functionality across multiple simultaneous stressors without visible collapse. People often manage one strain at a time, perhaps fear, perhaps fatigue, perhaps social pressure, but rarely all at once. The ability to remain coherent across these dimensions is not a sign of superiority. It is a marker of uncommon integration and maturity. You are not better in a moral or hierarchical sense. You are simply operating within a framework that is rare in its consistency and breadth. Chosen one. Reflect on how this reality has manifested in your daily life. Where others might have hesitated or overreacted, you continued with intention and presence. Where others might have allowed external friction to alter their focus, you preserved your internal alignment. This consistency is observable. It is verifiable in the choices you made, the relationships you navigated, and the responsibilities you fulfilled. The rarity here is not about exaltation. It is about acknowledgement. To experience multiple simultaneous pressures, to remain functional, to adapt quietly, and to sustain attention over time. These are qualities that exist naturally in very few. And you have demonstrated them repeatedly. You may have thought that maintaining composure under strain was accidental or learned solely from external examples. It was not. The coherence you displayed comes from internal preparation, accumulated experience, and the natural organization of your own system. It is structural, not performative. Others may admire or envy it. That is irrelevant. What matters is that you can recognize it in yourself without needing validation. This perspective allows for clarity and calm. You do not need to compare, compete, or justify your capacity. You only need to observe that your stability exists, is repeatable, and has operated under conditions that would disrupt most others. That acknowledgement alone recalibrates expectation. You no longer measure yourself by chaos or strain. You measure by the presence of steady operation under challenge. Chosen one. Rarity does not require exaggeration. It requires observation. It is quiet, unspoken, and factual. And that quiet fact is sufficient. Your capacity, your coherence, and your functionality are evidence that you are prepared, even when the external environment is not optimal. Take this in. Let it integrate. You are uncommon not because of external reward or recognition, but because the internal architecture you possess allows for consistency where others falter. That understanding is grounding. It is orientation. And it is essential as we move forward to clarify your identity more fully. Chosen one. Let's clarify this identity now calmly and without exaggeration. What you have been carrying, what you have been sustaining under pressure, is not extraordinary in the sense of being activated or heroic. It is baseline. It is the natural state of your internal coherence, the architecture of your system. You did not need to summon it. It was already present. You did not require external signals to maintain stability. You were prepared because you have been prepared through experience, through subtle internal calibration, and through the consistent alignment of your attention, emotion, and decision-making. This is why what you endured was not damaging. You did not survive despite yourself. You survived because your internal structure was sufficient. You have a readiness that others lack, not because of talent or willpower alone, but because your system has learned how to operate under consistent, measured pressure. It has learned timing, prioritization, and energy management, all without conscious fanfare. You have lived through conditions that might overwhelm others, yet you were functional. This is your baseline. Chosen one. Recognize that this coherence is not conditional. It is not turned on only when circumstances demand it. It is the default framework of your inner operation. Your preparation, maturity, and understanding of self have established a stable platform from which you navigate challenges. This is not a claim of invincibility. It is a statement of structure. You have developed the capacity to maintain presence and functionality as a natural expression of your system. It is also important to notice that this baseline is adaptive. It responds to pressure without requiring conscious micromanagement. You do not need to overcorrect, overthink, or overperform to maintain alignment. That is why you remained coherent under layered pressures that would fragment most others. Your stability is not performative. It is embedded. This understanding allows you to move forward without unnecessary scrutiny or self-critique. You can acknowledge that what you have demonstrated is a reflection of preparation, integration, and structure, not luck, chance, or extraordinary effort in the dramatic sense. It exists quietly, reliably, and consistently. Chosen one. Internalize this. Your strength is not reactive. It is not a temporary surge. It is inherent. You do not need to prove it to anyone. You do not need to measure it against external chaos. You simply are. That recognition removes doubt, reduces tension, and clarifies perspective. As you carry this clarity, you can begin to integrate awareness into practical orientation.